Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Minnesota Bound podcast, the stories behind the stories. I'm Laura Schara, your host for today, and I am thrilled to have my next guest chatting with us today. I have Cory Loeffler with us, and he is not only a National Goose Calling champion, he is also owner and founder of DRC Calls, which stands for Death Row Calls, and we're going to get the story behind all of this. Cory, welcome to the Minnesota Bound podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. I have to say, I just saw Cory at Game Fair. We just finished up Game Fair over the weekend, and you said you had a lot of enthusiastic people buying calls, getting ready for fall hunting season.
Yeah, we sure did. It was great to see everyone's smiling faces. It was so great to see everyone out and about. The Game Fair aisles were packed with people and dogs most every single day. We had great weather the whole time, and it was just great to get back out there and see everyone again. You know, with last year taking the year off, but
Yeah.
it was awesome. I think it really it just really lit a fire under everyone to get out of the house and go walk around and go do something, go see people. You know, it's great. I never thought I would say that. Yeah.
We had a lot of goose and duck callers going on too, because there's a goose and duck calling championship there, which I think you were a part of. And actually, I would love for you to share your story on how your road to becoming a National Goose Calling champion, including winning the American Masters Goose Calling contest. And, that's not easy to do. And you started at a really young age. How did you get into duck and goose calling?
Well, I just grew up pretty much as a townie, ride my bike around Thief River Falls, Minnesota for the most part, and traveling to and from hockey, football, and baseball practices, and was in a car accident when I was about 14, and that really changed my academic sporting career. It put an abrupt halt to that, and so prior to that, I had got introduced to hunting, deer hunting mostly, and some waterfowl hunting by my uncle, and that whole ball just got rolling down the hill at a pretty fast speed, after I couldn't go to hockey practice anymore. So then came archery hunting and shooting a bow a lot and practicing goose calling contests. And hockey up here in the North Country it's such a big part of people's lives. If you have kids in it, it takes up so much time. And I grew up playing hockey, and that's what all my free time was used up. So when I couldn't, I just had all this free time, and I just focused all my energy on the outdoors, and that's kind of what really got it kicked off. And I would just run my goose calls like crazy in my parents' basement, and I would break reeds in them things, and I'd be flipping out reeds left and right, and just trying to practice up for the next calling contest. And the Game Fair
How old
was
were you when you entered your first contest?
First one, I think I was about 16, maybe 15 or 16. And I think the first one was the Middle River Goose Festival up in Middle River, Minnesota in late September. And then following that contest, I think I blew in a couple contests at some Cabela stores across the state. And then it was off to Game Fair and trying out the novice goose at Game Fair and the Minnesota State contest down there back when the Minnesota Duck and Goose Callers ran all the contests.
So what I think is really fascinating about you, Cory, is you're somewhat self-taught with your goose calling abilities. And as you said, you're practicing in your parents' basement. I'm sure they just love that. But
so much.
Yes, they're like, keep doing this. This is fabulous. But what I also think is so cool about your story is that right from the beginning, you decided to make your own goose call, which no one at the time, I don't think, was doing that, especially at your age, to be able to compete, that you decided that what you were currently using or what you could find was not working. And so you decided to make your own.
Yeah, I was blown in a lot of goose calling contests, and I was kind of back and forth between a few different brands of calls, and nothing out there really, really fit my style exactly perfect. And this call had this characteristic that I liked, but it didn't have something else. And then this brand had this, but not this other thing, So my uncle, who is Brian Steiger's his name, he has a shop out in rural Red Lake Falls, Steiger Manufacturing out there. And some of you in the agriculture world might be familiar with that. It's where the Steiger tractor was invented, actually in that same shop. It had burned down at one time. But yeah, in that shop is where I started turning my own calls. I grabbed a few different characteristics from some other styles of calls out there and came up with my own style, my own design that fit all of my wants and needs in a goose call. And that's the creation of the DRC Call Company back in late 2006 and 2007.
2006, 2007. And I can tell you today, you have a very large business of making duck and goose calls. And you actually make not only everyone by hand, but you also tune everyone. You're, obviously from you tuning it, the National Goose Calling champion. So it sounds perfect before it heads out the door.
Yeah, I do my best. Every single call has to pass my inspection before it leaves the door. All the new orders do, and then all the retunes as well, which we're seeing come in the doors and in the mailbox right now. All the retunes that previous customers, past customers have had calls. They need a new read freshened up before season. So the mailbox is pretty busy this time of year.
I bet. When I had, and before, I want you to give some tips to our audience here on how to become a better duck and goose caller. But before we get there, I personally I have to tell this story, that I had a chance to take a lesson from you. We filmed this for Minnesota Bound, which is going to be airing very soon this fall, where you gave me a lesson on goose calling. And I had not had the opportunity to practice any goose calling previously to my lesson. So when we first started, it is not necessarily easy or something that's really natural when you put your lips up to a goose call to sound like a goose. So when I first started, which you'll see on TV, it's rather embarrassing. I did not sound like a goose at all. I think it was sounded more like stepping on a cat's foot or something, like it was just howling. But you gave me a couple of really good pointers, and then we realized I was feeling like the sound of the call was a little high pitched. And you're like, well, wait a minute. I actually didn't tune that one yet. And I was like, well, Cory, I just made a fool out of myself on TV, and I have a goose call that's not tuned.
A little sabotage.
Yes.
Find a little bit of humor in that.
Oh, no, it was good. I just watched the playback on the final edit, and there was so much of me of making a fool out of myself. I said, you know what, let's do a little bit more of Cory giving some great instructional tips for people. I think they get the point that I definitely need to do some practicing, though I felt like I got a little bit of it towards the end of our shoot there. I was kind of getting the hang of it. But speaking of
for sure.
Goose calling, what can you give some people some tips on how do you improve your goose calling skills? Because it's not easy. It's like playing an instrument.
Yeah, it definitely is. A short reed goose call operates with correct air presentation along with the correct hand placement. And if you want a very long version of all of this, I go through a free calling instructional that's about 2 hours long right on the homepage of my website. You jump on there at drccalls.com, log in, and I break this whole all the dynamics of short reed goose call. I break it all down for you right there. But air presentation, it's really like you're bringing air up from your diaphragm, similar to if you were going to fog up your glasses. Take your sunglasses off, fog them up so that you can clean them. That's where the air is going to need to come from in order to be blown at a high enough rate of speed to get the reeds to vibrate correctly. So you can't just buy a really expensive goose call off the shelf and pick it up and blow a little bit of air into it and expect to sound like a goose, it does take a little bit of practice, but you were working at it for 5 or 10 minutes and got the hang of it, got the basics down. So it was a lot of fun. I had a great time on that shoot, and can't wait for the episode to come out.
I know it was a really good time. One of the things that you had said, it was like a to-wit. I remember that.
Yeah, you can use a word reference for some different notes that you plan to try and mimic. But that basic honk that geese do, that low note where it starts at the low note, it breaks over, goes into the high note, haw, like that. In order to do that on a goose call, you can reference some words like to wit, and the wit part of that word reference is going to increase the airflow, increase the amount of pressure that you're putting on the air and your diaphragm, and the amount of air speed, and then that's going to get that call to break over to the higher note. And a lot of people say that geese honk, and then every other note that they do or sound that they do is just a variation of that honk. It might be just a shortened version of the right where it breaks over, which would be just like huh, huh, and like a cluck almost. Or there's different types of moans. There's different types of feeding sounds that are kind of all just variations of that honk. So with goose calling, it's kind of a crawl, walk, run sort of a learning process. And as long as you have if you start off with the right foot forward and the right dynamics from some proper teaching, it's actually pretty surprising how fast you can learn quite a few notes and be of value and help your friends out in the blind and help call some geese in.
Very cool. I also want to chat with our audience too about how much you should be calling or should not be calling when you see geese coming in coming in towards your blind, et cetera. So before we get there, but first, a word from Connecticut Drinking Water. I am extremely picky when it comes to drinking water. I have the reverse osmosis drinking water system from Connecticut, and I love it. Not only does it take the contaminants out of my water, but it removes chlorine, and most importantly, it tastes great. Having Connecticut water also means I use less plastic water bottles, which of course we all know is a bonus for our environment. For more information, visit Connecticut.com to find a dealer near you. And also a word from Voyager Saunas.
Hey there, Bill Shirk, the man about the woods. You know what? It's time to relax, and Voyager can help. Voyager builds custom saunas for your home, backyard, business, and you know what? The pick of the Shirk family, we love Voyager's mobile saunas that go anywhere we want to go. Clear grade cedar benches, spray foam insulation, Kuma wood-fired stoves, or Hilo electric heaters. These are Finnish-influenced hand-built saunas that will last a lifetime. They're constructed with care by the hometown Voyagers team. The Shirk family loves our Voyager mobile sauna. Voyager, a Minnesota movement influenced by Finnish culture. Visit VoyagerSaunas.com and get ready to distress. Trust me, it works.
All right, Cory, let's talk about when you're in the field and you're patiently waiting for some geese to come in to feed. Is there a kind of a rule of thumb when it comes to how much you should be calling, or can you be over calling at times? I know there is a fine line with turkey hunting. Some people say you can overdo it. Some people say you can never overdo it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, with goose calling, it kind of depends on if you're hunting big geese or little geese, like the little cacklers and lessers down in Texas and Oklahoma. With those little ones, the more sound, the more volume, the better. With these big geese that we have in our backyard in Minnesota, that's not always the case. So I like to read the bird's body language when they're in the air and approaching, our spread of decoys. If we're hunting a water spot, I typically will use a lot less volume and a lot less calling because birds aren't as vocally active on the water. They're just kind of resting, hanging out, getting a drink. When they're a little noisier and making and squawking a lot more and fighting and running around, it would be when they're feeding because they're fighting over that food source. So that's when we're going to get a little bit more aggressive on the calls. And if we've got 2 or 3 good goose callers out there. We don't like to try and call over each other all the time. We like to kind of work with each other, listen to what the other people are doing, the other callers, what notes they're using. And if you have some different notes in your bag of tricks, you could try sound different than them, so you can have a variety of sound. But we just like to keep it as natural as possible. And I found that trying to mimic live birds feeding on the ground, I'll park the truck when the birds are out in the field. When we're out scouting, I'll just park the truck, roll the windows down, and just give them a listen and just see how much volume and how often they're honking and clucking out there. And then the next day, use that to our advantage and try to mimic those live birds as they were on the ground. And some days more calling is going to work, and some days less calling is going to work. So like I said, I like to read the birds when they're in the air, approaching the decoys, and if things are going good, we don't change it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. So,
of course. How much listening do you do, or did you do, I guess, when you're really learning the sport of becoming a real expert caller, to each of the different, species of geese that you like to hunt, from snow geese to the Canada goose? Did you do a lot of just plain listening to their sounds to really perfect what you were doing on a call?
Yes. So much of that, different types of year. When you're out snow goose hunting in the spring, you're only allowed to shoot snow geese and Ross geese. So you can't shoot Canada geese, and they're flying around all the time, and you can't shoot speckled belly geese. They're flying around with the snow geese. So you get to hear all sorts of different birds and, ducks and sandhill cranes alike. So, the more time you spend out in the field, the more exposure you have to all these different species of birds communicating back and forth. And I think, practice makes perfect, I guess. So the more time you're out there in the field with them, I think the better caller it can make you.
Totally. Yeah. So, and you have a special goose blind or hunting blind that you like to use, and it's called the Tiki Hut. And I'm going to have you explain what that is, because I think it's super unique, to say the least. But first, a word from Minnesota's DNR. Minnesota's wildlife management areas are a vast array of lands across all of Minnesota. These 1,440 wildlife management areas are valued for wildlife and Minnesota's outdoor recreation opportunities. Annually, the DNR maintains hunter walking trails, plants food plots for wildlife, and develops acres and acres of prairie and grasslands. To find out more about Minnesota wildlife management areas, go to www.mndnr.gov/WMAS.
Start planning your fall hunt in North Dakota at legendarynd.com. North Dakota is home to more than 800,000 plots, hunting acres. Those acres are private land that is open to public hunting, and the plots map guides show you exactly where all that land sits. North Dakota's ringneck pheasant crowing counts are up 15% this year, and of course that takes good habitat. The state is also home to an estimated 2.9 million breeding ducks. North Dakota, it's an absolute outdoor oasis just waiting. Bag your limit this fall in North Dakota. Visit legendarynd.com.
Do you know what it costs to heat water at your home, cabin, or business? No? Well, we do. Based on data from the U.S. Department of Energy, the average annual savings for homes that heat their water with propane rather than electricity is $175. You can save energy and get 2.5 times as much hot water compared to the average electric water heater. Let's save energy and money with the cleaner, greener fuel, propane, the right energy right now. All right, Cory, let's talk about the Tiki Hut. Do you want to explain to our listeners what kind of goose blind you like to use? I think we need to see a picture. You got to go to Cory's Instagram page or his website to see this too, but go ahead.
Decoys and breakfast on wheels, as I sometimes like to call it, I guess. So I had this crazy idea about 5 years ago, probably, to build a permanent A-frame style structure on top of let's call it a fish house, drop down fish house frame, and then brush the whole thing up with cattails and corn stalks and willow branches, all sorts of natural vegetation, and use that contraption, that trailer, use that thing to hunt out of. And I drew it up on paper, and then again went out to my uncle's shop, Brian Steiger Manufacturing, and showed him the plans, and he loves a good challenge. So we took a look at it and said, yeah, I think we can build it. So we bought an axle and started from there, a whole bunch of square tubing and an axle. And we started measuring and welding, and we put this thing together and built it literally from scratch, from the ground up. And I've used it now for 3, I think going on 4 years. And it is just, it's just a blast to hunt out of, because we can hook it onto the back of the pickup, drive it out into the field, unhook it, drop it down to the ground. All the decoys are stored right in there. So whoever's going hunting can jump in, grab the decoys, go put the decoy spread out. I typically will fire up the flat top grill and get some coffee warmed up and start in on the breakfast burritos and the eggs and pancakes. You know, I love a good pancake breakfast. So I'll start cooking, and they all load their guns and get to goose calling. And that's kind of an average morning up here on the tundra around Thief River Falls for us. So
exactly. Well, you forgot. I don't know if you mentioned what your metal tube on wheels is covered in.
Just the cattails and corn, and is that what you're talking, or?
Yes. So
yeah,
when this thing is driving down the road, it looks like basically a round. I mean, it has cattails and straw in it, and it basically looks like a round. I don't even know how to explain it. A hairy, round blind on wheels going down the road. And you can fit, how many people in there? 7?
Yeah, 7, 8 people, really comfortable. You know, I've got asked by multiple people that don't have a clue what it is. Well, most everyone doesn't have a clue what it is if you haven't hunted with me. But I've got asked by multiple people, what are you doing hauling all those cattails around for? They looks like a bale. It looks like, probably
a bale of straw,
5 or 6 round bales of cattails going down the road. So I guess we did our job right. You know, we fooled people into thinking it's cattails. So it should fool a goose, right?
For sure. Yeah, Cory has the best setup. You know, you get out into the field, and I think he has probably the most decoys I've ever seen any hunter have. I feel like it was like 500 that were set out there, I swear. But besides that, once the tube is emptied out, there's all a bunch of seats. You have a griddle in there. There's coffee in there. So as we're goose hunting, Cory is, making breakfast on the griddle of egg burritos for breakfast. Everybody's, hanging out, having a good time. So not only is it, you're hunting, but you're also being very social and having breakfast at the same time. So you have a pretty cool setup. And I believe that you said someone purchased one from you. Did they not?
Yeah, I've built a few of them now, and a couple outfitter friends of mine are running them in about 2 weeks up in Saskatchewan. And those are 35 feet long, and they'll hunt like 15 people in there. So they're big ones.
That is incredible. Yeah, definitely go to Cory Loeffler's. What's your Instagram and social media handle, Cory?
Our business page, Facebook would be DRC Call Company. My personal Instagram is just Cory Loeffler. Also drccalls.com on the World Wide Web. The
World Wide Web, yes. And go to Cory's Instagram page or his Facebook page to get a look at the blind that he's using, that he made from scratch, and check out the Tiki Hut because it's pretty cool. Cory,
or just watch the Minnesota Bound episode in just a little while,
that's
right?
Coming up too. Yes, I actually am doing 2 stories with Cory. One is on the lesson that he gave me to become a goose caller. But second, we're doing a story on you and your story and how you became the National Goose Calling champion. And also you have a nickname, which is the Goose Wizard. How did you get that?
After I won the North American calling contest, Brad Dockin over at the Grand Forks Herald wrote an article about me. He came over and interviewed me and wrote an article, and he titled it the Goose Call Wizard. And my friends saw that, and it has stuck since about 2010. So, and that, hey, we just had some shirts for sale at at Game Fair, the Goose Wizard T-shirt. So I
love it.
If you would have came and hung out in the blind, if you weren't stuck in the information booth all day, I would have gave you one. But I'll have to get you one here.
Had I known, I would love to rock a Goose Wizard t-shirt. That's actually the perfect name for you. In fact, that's what we're calling our Minnesota Bound story. So it will continue that nickname. Better make sure it's legendary.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, Cory, thank you for joining us on the podcast today. We appreciate all the valuable information. And again, if you are looking for an instructional on how to become a better goose caller or duck caller, you can go to Cory's website. And Cory, why don't you give us that website one more time?
drccalls.com.
Awesome. And again, thank you, and have a really good fall season.
Oh, absolutely. It was a blast. Thanks for having me on, and be safe out there and have fun.
Thank you. I look forward. We gotta go hunting again sometime. That was such a good time.
You name the place, I'll be there.
All right, that sounds good. Also, thank you to Voyager Saunas, Connecticut, Minnesota DNR, Minnesota Propane, and North Dakota Tourism. And last but not least, remember to introduce a kid to the great outdoors.